introducing ourselves here?
Yeah. I mean, you want to, I thought we'd introduce all three of us at the very beginning.
We should.
Probably, right? Yeah. So,
And did you see? Oh, I was going to say the clicker.
yeah. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. This is the new participants overview. If you were expecting the training on formal methods, that's next door. Also, for those of you who are between me and line of sight, obviously this room is a little bit awkward. So if you want to move where you can see a little bit better, if you want to see us, you might want to do that. This is basically what we're going to be talking about today. There's three of us up here. Each of us is going to do different parts of the program. I'm Karen O'Donohue. I've been coming to the IETF now for close to 30 years, and I'm one of the coordinators of the Education and Outreach Directorate. So we're obviously very interested in your experience here. And with that, I'm going to have my two co-speakers introduce themselves.
Is this on? You can hear me? Okay. My name is Michelle Cotton. For those of you on the new participant mailing list, I'm the one that's sending you all those messages. I apologize. Hopefully they're helpful. I've been coming to the IETF a little bit over 20 years, and I've served different roles over the years, but right now I focus on new participant activities and helping with the guides program, which some of you may have seen also on the mailing list, and various other things. But I work for the Secretariat AMS, which helps plan the meetings and organize everything.
Hi. Hi, my name is Rich Sauls. I'm a comparison newcomer, only been 12 years, 15. And I do a lot of work in the security area. I was also chair of NOMCOM last year, and I'm a gadfly about the way the IETF organizes some things. So, and been involved with the newcomers and the outreach and education for 5-6 years.
All right. So with that, as you can see, we have a fair amount of diversity in our experience up here. So feel free to reach out to any of us at any time. With that, we'll go ahead and get started. So this particular presentation, we want to sort of set the expectations for it. It talks about the IETF in general, and it gives you the information that will help you get started this week. It's not a history of the IETF. It's not everything that you ever wanted to know about the IETF. That would obviously take a little bit more than this. So if there's something you feel at the end of this that is missing, feel free to speak up. And if there's, especially as you go through the week, you're like, wow, it would have been really helpful if they had told me this at that point. Any of those kinds of things that you realize as new participants were a little bit of a struggle for you, those are the kinds of things we'd like to know about. First of all, you're going to see this when you register for the meeting. You clicked and acknowledged this, and you'll see it all week. This is the set of rules that we abide by. And by coming to this meeting, by registering this meeting, you have agreed to follow all of these rules. And there's a number of best current practices. You're going to hear a lot of acronyms here, and I'll try not to do too many of them, but BCP is best current practice. And there's a whole set of processes, also things like the code of conduct and the anti-harassment, intellectual property, those kinds of things are covered in all of these different BCPs. So if you have any questions, be sure to talk to any of the leadership, and they will be happy to give you some advice on those. The other thing is we do track attendance at the meeting. This is an open standards organization, and so we need to have some awareness of who's in the room and who's influencing the development of the standards. You are going to be asked in every meeting that you attend to scan a QR code. You might have heard of us talking about blue sheets in the past. We passed around blue sheets. We are starting to do that again for those of you who have trouble scanning those QR codes. You can scan this. So if anybody wants to pass that around, you can join the meeting using a full laptop client, or you can use the client that's on your phone. Also, another thing is asking questions in sessions. Obviously, this is a working meeting, so we want people to be able to ask questions. But we do manage, because we are a meeting that is both in person and remote, and we like to be sure that all of the remote participants have the opportunity. Um, we do manage the queue, and so we have a queue, and you have to join the queue in order to ask a question. And you can do that either with the full client, or you can use it on your laptop queue. Um, Feel free to ask any questions as we go through this meeting. Um, and then the next thing, just to sort of as an admin part, lanyards, pins, and buttons. When you're registering downstairs, you probably saw a lot of different cues for different things. The first one that's quite important is lanyards. We do have uh, uh, white lanyards for feel free to take my picture, and then there's red lanyards if you would rather um, avoid your picture. Avoid having your picture. It's not a guarantee that you won't be in any shots anywhere, but what it is a guarantee is we won't take a shot of you personally. Um, and we actually have our photographer in the back of the room who will be taking most of those pictures. Um, we also have pins. This grew out of COVID, but it remains now. It's sort of like, how much contact are you comfortable with? So, green is, hey, I haven't seen you in a few months and you're a great friend, give me a big hug. Yellow is, I'm a little bit cautious, so, elbow bumps or whatever. And then, red is, please maintain some distance. The last one is language buttons. There is a large array of language buttons downstairs. And if you speak uh, other languages, please feel free to grab one. And that way you all can connect with other people that speak. And sometimes that helps, especially for the new participants. So that's all of the admin details. The next section is the overview of the IETF. Um, so the mission of the IETF is to make the internet better by producing high quality, relevant technical documents that influence the way people design, use, and manage the internet. The whole point of this is we're developing standards that actually get used. And our general ethos is that everybody can participate. It's not limited to companies or governments. And you could easily be an active participant in the IETF and never physically attend a meeting. So everything is done in the open. It's done on mailing lists. It's done on GitHub repositories. And all of the work is available for free. So all of the standards are available. We judge contributions based on technical merits. And then finally, the success is the deployment of the standards. So, I'm not saying that all IETF documents are ultimately successful, but, you can look over time for the standards that have been deployed and have a lot of uptake, and that's what we're striving for. This is our objectives. So it is a standards development organization. If you're familiar with ITU, IEEE, there's a number of different types of standard organizations out there. We have self-selected individual participants. Now, obviously, participants do come representing the company or whoever is funding them to come, or their university if they're working on academic grants, or they may be doing it on their own personal remit. So it is attempts to be driven by market-based adoption. A lot of what you said, if you were here this weekend and you saw the hackathon, what you're seeing is a cyclical development process where it's not that you completely write the standard and then you start development. It's that you do prototypes and then you evolve the standard based on that prototype. I know that the working group that I chair, there's a couple of folks downstairs who are working, and then they plan to come out of this weekend with here's some additional information we need in the specification because it was not adequate for me to be able to do the implementation. It is bottom up. There's no formal voting. We do raise hands and we occasionally hum, and there's no formal government role. This is not to say that governments don't participate. It's just that there's no formal role for governments here. And then there's no boosts or sales or those kinds of things because it's a working meeting. The funding model for the IETF, we added this in because we get a lot of questions about this. The IETF relies on a variety of support to ensure that the work is open and accessible. The registration fees for this fund the meeting itself, but it also funds the working of the Secretariat. Then we also have donations and corporate contributions, and then a lot of sponsorships. One of the things that you probably saw downstairs is this meeting we have no sponsor. So because we have no sponsor of the meeting, we don't have a social. Sometimes we have a social in the one evening during the week. We don't have that. We also don't have T-shirts for free. A lot of times we give out T-shirts for each meeting, but those are the kinds of things that sponsorships get us. And since we don't have a sponsorship this time, we don't have those kinds of things. We do have a lot of other sponsorships, and you'll see the signage around, like the diversity and inclusion and the connectivity sponsorship. If you look at the hackathon, there's a number of sponsors that sponsored all of that activity. So the big picture. The IETF is made up of a number of bodies. Um, the first one is the IESG, so that's the Internet Engineering Steering Group. And every working group in the IETF belongs to an area, and each area has 2 or maybe 3 area directors. And that collection of area directors makes up the IESG. On the research side of the house, we also have the Internet Research Task Force. And that is for work that's not ready for standardization yet, or for topics that are a little bit outside the scope of standardization. For example, there's a human rights protocol considerations working group. Those kinds of things happen in the IRTF. The IRTF has a collection of research groups, and then they have a steering group that manages that collection of research groups. It's made up of the chairs of the research groups and some invited participants. There's also the Internet Architecture Board that provides oversight to the Internet architecture. It also manages all of our external liaisons, and so our relationships with working bodies that are outside of the IETF are managed through the IAB. And there's some liaison coordinator positions, and so like the relationship, for example, between the IETF and the IEEE is managed through the IAB. If you go onto their website, you'll see a whole section on all of the different liaisons that are managed through that process. The final group to mention is the Administrative LLC, and that is the group that does all of the funding and administration, manages all of the contracts. So it's basically the corporate home for the IETF and the IAB and the IRTF, and it does fiscal things and administrative support. There's also 2 other bodies that I have on here that are related to the IETF and support the IETF, but stand separate a little bit. The first one is the RFC editor, and that publishes all of the documents that we have. Obviously very closely related to the IETF, also publishes additional streams, and there's a whole separate tutorial that could be done on how the RFC editor is structured. And finally, there's IANA, which is Internet it does names and numbers. So if you're developing a protocol and you need a protocol ID, it goes through IANA, and they manage all of our lists of all of those kinds of things. Those 2 functions are very critical to the maintaining of our standards going forward. So I mentioned that that working groups are in collections of areas. And so right now we have this set of areas. I will tell you that it is changing slightly, and you'll probably hear some discussion about that this week, but this is not static. Oh, there it says down at the bottom, changing soon. It varies over time depending on the kind of work that we're doing. So right now we have applications in real time. So if you think about the SIP protocols, voice over IP, those kinds of things. We have transport, which does obviously TCP, UDP, quick, and those kinds of things, congestion control, those kinds of mechanisms generally fall into transport. We have the routing area, which does all of the routing and signaling protocols. The internet area, which does the IP protocols, IPv4, IPv6, the IPv6 ops, those kinds of things. Well, IPv6 ops is actually in operations and management, but also time synchronization, if you're interested in that, that's in the internet area. Operations and management does the network management protocols. It also does operations kinds of things. And so that's where, once a protocol is really stable, and a lot of the work that's going on is talking about deployment types of issues. And I know there's a V6 ops, there's also DNS ops, there's CIDR ops, which is the secure interdomain routing protocol. There's the security area, which does all of the security mechanisms. And finally, there's the general area, which generally focuses on things about updating IETF processes and those kinds of things. So those are the current areas. You'll see on the agenda how they're marked and collected into those areas. The next thing that comes up a lot in the IETF is the IETF is based on a consensus model. And so this is not a strict majority voting. This is about uh, when you get rough consensus, all of the issues that have been addressed, but not necessarily accommodated. So that doesn't mean that everybody gets their way. What it means is the group has discussed the issue and decided a way forward based on rough consensus. So you can be heard, but the dissenting opinions don't necessarily control. So there's no like veto power. So humming is a way to measure consensus. That is not voting. You'll hear that referenced in connection with IETF sometimes externally to the IETF because it's the IETF is a little bit odd because we're that organization that hums. But what it's really about is measuring consensus. How strongly do people feel? If everybody in the room kind of agrees with something, they might all hum softly. If everybody feels passionate about it, they might hum louder. It also doesn't allow you to tell who across the room is favoring one thing or another. It's supposed to give you some sort of anonymity is the wrong word, but some sort of um, how do people generally feel? How passionate do they feel? How do you get it that way? The session chairs, the working group chairs, that's one of their biggest jobs is to determine the consensus in the working group. And in some working groups, obviously, it's a lot easier than in others. There's a whole RFC on consensus and humming written by Pete Resnick. So if you are interested in this further, I'd encourage you to read the RFC. So the next thing people wonder is, how do you join working groups and contribute to existing work? So you start out by looking, later on, we're going to talk about resources. And the most important resource for you all to really get familiar with is the data tracker. So everything that's done in the IETF is in the data tracker somehow. So every working group has its own data tracker page. And as you can see across the top, it has a thing about the working group itself, and then it has a list of the documents. It has all of the previous meetings and minutes associated and materials associated with those meetings. It has a link to the list archive, so it has every working group has a mailing list. And their archive is available publicly. So you can see the charter and the milestones for the working group. I will admit sometimes working group chairs are some are better than others at updating milestones. So some of the milestones might look a little bit out of date. And so if you're interested in it, join the mailing list. That's step one. Review any documents that are currently in progress or any published RFCs that are associated with that working group. And then if you have any questions, feel free to contact the chairs. So that's how you join existing work. How do you start new work in the IETF? As we've already talked about, the IETF is contribution driven. So it doesn't help you to come here and say, you all should do that. You need to come here and say, here's a problem that needs to be solved, and here's a possible solution for that problem. And so participants identify a problem that needs solving, and later on in the presentation, somebody is going to reference, for example, the hot RCs tonight. And those are like lightning talks on possible new ideas. And that's a good way to just say, hey, I have an idea. Is there anybody else interested in this particular topic? And because the next step, once you find, the last step is actually you need to find people willing to work on the problem with you. So the problem needs to fit into one of the areas, and it needs to align with the architectural principles of the internet. And if it does that, then you bring the work to the IETF. There's a number of ways that it gets into the working group process, and then once it gets into the working group process, it just continues as the thing. Once the other couple things on scope. First of all, the research needs to be basically complete. So you're not going to spin up a working group to do research. There's already a problem that's identified and possible solutions on the table, and that is how a working group gets started. Here's some additional information on that. We've been talking about updating this tutorial, but we haven't done it yet. There's a really good tutorial on how to bring new work to the IETF, but the previous slide was about the basic process, but how do you really make it happen? One of the key things you need to do is to find some collaborators that have a similar interest. need to write some initial internet drafts, maybe have some barb-offs. Now, barb-off is another one of those terms that might not be. And a barb-off is just basically an informal gathering of people. Um, Historically, the idea was you would all go down to the bar and sit around the bar and write on napkins. That still happens some. It also may happen in some of the side meetings. And later in the meeting, in this presentation, we'll talk about the side meeting wiki and if the informal meetings. Um, that's also often new work spinning up or discussions about new work spinning up. So once you have some initial text and you have some initial collaborators, you might want to talk to the area directors in the relevant area. Some of the areas have these sessions called dispatch sessions. A dispatch session is basically you coming to the dispatch group with your idea, and then they'll say, they'll have a quick discussion on it, and then it's like, should we try to start a working group on this, or should we do like an AD sponsored document, or is this something that the general dispatch group feels is not within the scope of the IETF? But if you're interested in a particular area and looking at the new work that might be coming in that area, watch for those dispatch sessions on the agenda, because that's where they come in. So once you've got to this point, you might want to propose a BOF, and there's a whole process for proposing a BOF. And BOF is basically birds of a feather, and a BOF session is looking at the what would you need to set a BOF session. You need to prove that there is a problem that needs to be solved. It's within the scope of the IETF. You have some existing work on the table. You have a possible draft charter. And there is one of the things that the IAB offers to do is to help do shepherding of BOFs. So if you're interested in a BOF proposal and you want to get some additional information to get some guidance on how to properly structure it so it might be accepted, you could also reach out to the IAB or to the area directors. Then you hold your BOF and you hope that it is dramatic, super successful. And then the consensus of the BOF determines what the next steps are. So the leadership, the IESG and the IAB will get together and they'll discuss, there's a whole process for spinning up working groups. And there's also, as part of that, there's a community comment. But anyway, if you're interested at all in new work, I'd strongly suggest that you take a look at this tutorial. And one of these days, we might update this tutorial. So with that, I'm going to pass over to Rich, and he's going to talk to you about the structure of the week. I know. You push the button. That's amazing.
All right. How many people came here from like more than 2 time zones away? So you're feeling jet lagged? That's okay. By the end of the week, everybody will be tired and grumpy. I guarantee it. All right. So the week starts today. Yesterday was kind of the start, and you saw some email from Michelle about the hackathon. It was yesterday and today. But this is the first official kickoff of the IETF week, which runs through Friday later afternoon than it usually does. The IETF has about 130 working groups focused on particular areas, such as DNS record types or transport security or how to do APIs via HTTP. A subset of those are meeting here. Many groups are not meeting because they don't have any new work to present or because there's too many conflicts. Karen also talked, I think there's about 80 meeting here, which makes it, puts interesting requirements on the hotel where we meet and the cities we can meet in, because we need, lots of conference rooms that can hold from, for the most part, 30 to 150 people at the same time. And so that tends to be big hotels or conference centers. There's also the IRTF sessions, which are held at the same time. Those include things like measurement and protocol analysis. There was a human rights, as Karen mentioned earlier, and so on. They meet at the same time. It's a separate organization, but it's a sister organization. We feed into the same parent, same management chain that meets up at the top, if you will. Not at this meeting, but in the March meeting is the ANRP, which is a joint program with the IETF and the ACM, where they're more academic papers and more academic focus. Ours is much more of a focus, for the most part, for the IETF, is a focus on practical protocol development and deployment. There are also tutorials. This is one of them. Social events, when we have a sponsor, there's no major social event this meeting. Tutorials, there's deep dives, there's lunch meetings. We have a lot of lunch meetings scheduled as part of the formal schedule this time around. Hot RFC is tonight. That's people are given sort of 7 or 8 minutes to talk about something. In this case, the reuse of the term RFC is deliberate. It's request for conversation as opposed to request for comments, which is also at this point sardonic. Once it's published, we're still looking for comments, but the idea is it's published. There are side meetings. There's a wiki. If you look at the schedule, it will say side meetings wiki, and you can see that there are various informal things. Some of the rooms along this hallway are reserved for side meetings. They also now have remote participation available, which did not before. Working group sessions are the biggest, most important part of the IETF week. That's why we're here, basically. Most of the work is done on the mailing list between meetings. As Karen mentioned, if you're going to a working group meeting, the way to get the most out of it is to look at the documents. There's a page later, we'll talk about the data tracker, which is our IETF content management and workflow system. The face-to-face meetings are mostly people presenting drafts. We'll talk about what changed since the last time. So don't expect to go to DNS and find out a primer on what's the difference between an authoritative and a recursive or DNS client. You're supposed to know those things, but so what you look and you'll find out what's changed since we last met pretty much 4 months ago. Also, solving key and open issues. You get, face-to-face discussion is the best way to resolve things. We do officially resolve everything through email, but it can be a really bad medium for human communication sometimes. All the sessions are streamed. They're available on the internet for a modest fee during the actual presentation. And then they're available on our IETF YouTube channel. They're recorded. We are experimenting. This is, I think, the 3rd meeting where we have live captioning. It's a mix of AI in some instances, such as this one, and humans in some of the more important meetings like the plenary. Every working group has a charter that's negotiated with the area director. The BOFs that Karen mentioned are often will start drafting a charter, work with the area director, and then create a working group. Birds of a feather. I don't want to spend too much time because we're running late on this. But there can be a poster. There can be we did one for Acme, which said, had a little poem with doggerel and said, encrypt everything. Because that's kind of what a lot of IETF people feel is a good thing to do. The IETF, the operators who attend the IETF, maybe not so much. Oh, pointed at the computer. There we go. The research sessions, it's officially a part of the IAB because the IAB appoints the IETF chair. It's focused on research, as Karen mentioned. The Applied Networking Research Prize is given to the best couple, it depends on how many there are, papers in the area of applied networking. So you might see things like people saying, oh, we wrote a paper on looking at DNS latencies on lookup, or a paper on the problem with certificates extending the quick handshake beyond a single UDP packet, kind of technical stuff. You get a plaque, you get free sponsorship to come to the IETF. It's a lot of undergrad or graduate students generally get these things. As typical of the IETF, there is a document, an RFC, that describes what the IETF is about for people who attend the IETF. There are also area-wide sessions. So the art area meets Monday for everything in the applications area, general discussions. They will tend to be 2-sentence summary of from each working group chair. For those area sessions that are later in the week, they can say, yeah, we already posted our minutes, or no, we're not meeting till Friday, or so and so. Sometimes they'll have guest speakers locally. So when we've met in Korea, we had in the SAG, we had somebody actually from Japan, or maybe it was in Yokohama. We had somebody from Japan talking about a particular crypto algorithm that they're interested in Japan. Plenary is a Latin word meaning all of us meet together. That's the one meeting where nothing is scheduled opposite it, and that is where that sentence wasn't quite right, but anyhow, nothing is scheduled opposite the plenary, and that's where all of the administrative entities that you saw earlier, the LLC board, the trustees, who are the people who own the intellectual property, the copyrights on the RFCs, the the staff and the various boards, the IESG and the IAB, they present on what's going on. It's kind of like in the U.S. watching C-SPAN sometimes, but it's yeah, but it is the point where the IETF shows its governance and how things are going on. The budget, the attendance numbers. Are they declining rapidly? Are they declining slowly? What have we done lately about the age of participants and so on? So it's interesting if you want to know how the IETF functions, as opposed to diving just into the deep technical stuff. It gets maybe a third of the IETF attendees attend the plenary. Also, there's an in memoriam section, unfortunately getting more and more common, and a prize for, I forget what it's called, the best internet person, internet person, what is it? The John Postel Award. It's a service award. The person who's given the most of themselves or helped the internet develop in their country or for the IETF as a whole. And that's interesting and sometimes inspiring. The hackathon, everyone can go. If you're at all interested in doing programming and developing some of the protocols, as Karen mentioned, it tends to be an iterative process. A draft comes out, we get together and try to implement it. Oh, this thing, where we said we have to respond within 1/10 of a second, that's way too long. We need it to be, 500 milliseconds. Oh, well, that doesn't work on the public internet. So, these kinds of trade-offs, a lot of that, as someone said recently, I heard, code exposes all lies. Which is a really good way to put it, or all untruths. And so you don't want your standard to have things that are impossible to implement or untruths in the real world. So the hackathon and the working groups, it's a virtuous cycle of getting, deploying it, getting it better, better and better, and so on. It's also, once you've been to a few IETFs, it's a great way to just show up early and walk around the tables and say hi to friends you haven't seen before, or seen in the last 4 months or 6 months or 8 months. It's free. Generally sponsored by Cisco in the past. I forget who did this one. You get free lunch, you get a t-shirt. Social networking and social events. On the left is a couple people meeting, outside one of the conference rooms. Sitting down there is Michael Richardson, it's Kyle Nekritz from Google Quick. On the right is a social event. We're not having this one this year. It would be hosted by the local sponsor. This was at the Singapore National Aquarium. So we all got to eat sushi watching the fish. It was a little, the octopus wasn't happy. IETF Sisters is a social group within the IETF. If you present as a woman, I think that's the way to say it. There are various coffees this week and social breaks. I'm sure both of my co-hosts here can provide some intro if you haven't already seen about it. Also, there's the group IETF Sisters. General meeting etiquette. As I implied, it's not a really good, unless it's like the first time a working group is meeting or the first time somebody is presenting a document, and it will say either like draft -00 or -01. Don't expect much tutorial information. So you want to be prepared. You want to look at the groups that you're interested in, at least skim the documents. Agendas should have been out before. I just got mine out yesterday, I think, or maybe when the AD nagged me on Friday. Uh, Behave respectfully, tolerant, just because somebody believes that the retransmit period should be 2 seconds as opposed to half a second, that doesn't make them a bad person, right? It's just technical. The IETF has been around for 30 plus years, and a lot of people have been here. Um, at my nominating committee last year, I was the chair. Um, we had two people on the committee who were here at IETF number one, and they've been more or less there every single one. And it can be kind of intimidating. You see someone who's been working in networking for 30 years before there was the internet, back before there was even TCP. And these people know each other, and they can speak more frankly or bluntly to each other. But as a general rule, we try to be polite, we try to be respectful, we make sure to listen, because sometimes that idiot over there may know more about than you do about something. Enjoy yourself. It's a really fun time. Uh, Test your configuration. Well, it's kind of too late now, right? It says in advance. Um, Keep your audio and video off. We all know how to do this, right? After plus years of COVID, we know how to do video meetings. The IETF has a bespoke, uh, which I always thought just meant classy, like it's a bespoke suit. No, it means custom built. Meet Echo, there is a lightweight client, which you can get by scanning the UR code that's displayed in the middle, or outside every room, there will be a QR code that will point you to the session that's going on in that room. The attendance is important. We keep records, because sometimes people might disclose patent or confidential information, and we have to say, no, they weren't there in the room, see? Um, so it rarely happens. It used to be that we would send out blue pieces of paper where everyone would sign their name on the attendee list, and they would be collected and scanned and available online. The attendee lists are public, just like everything else at the IETF. We don't do that now. We use MeetEcho to record who was at the meetings, but out of a sense of history, that's why the paper that has the QR code is blue. So that's why we used to call them blue sheets, but now it's just blue QR code. Zulip is the IETF chat system. It's an open source chat system, uh, comparable, or the same but different, like Slack, but it's free, and there's always a Zulip person around for when there's Zulip questions or problems, because they're very interested in supporting the IETF. Okay. Resources. This me too? Okay, good. What to do when you get lost, or help, so the participants, as I said, we're passionate, we're smart, right? All of us, especially here in this room, right, are very smart. We value technical excellence, and by excellence, by we, I mean the whole IETF community. We try, don't make comments on dress, speech, so and so. English is the official language. We try to adopt to other people. Be hesitant. I have sat in sessions where, I really had to listen carefully. Sometimes it's an English speaker who speaks very, very quickly like this, and everybody here knows who I'm talking about. But there are also people who don't speak English as well. But on the other hand, like, if I had to speak their language, nothing would ever get done. So be respectful, be appreciative of what people are doing. The dress code is kind of informal. I put on a nice shirt for you all, but that, people have known each other for years and decades. The dots and the blue dots. So there'll be dots on the badges. There's a color code. The blue one means they're a chair of a working group. The smiley face, I think it's implied. If you have any kind of dot at all, that should mean you have a smiley face, which means you're open to you're open for questions from newcomers to help them. There's ones for the various organizations. There's ribbons underneath. There's a few that have particular meaning. Um, they don't have my working group here, but oh well. And then there's often just blank ribbons and grease pens, so you can write your own things, right? Love dogs, hate cats, whatever it's going to be. Or, I'm too young to be this cynical. This kind of, okay. Professional staff. We have Jay Daly, our executive director. He will talk. He's the one who sent out the welcome to IETF 118 that didn't talk about the network. That's a different group, but general, nice guy based in London. Uh, he will also be presenting at the plenary. The secretariat, of which Michelle is a member, is our professionally paid staff. They make the whole system work. If you have any question at all about the logistics of how do I find the meeting room or what's going on, ask one of the people in the blue shirts. At the end of the day, they traditionally wear tie-dye because it's Casual Friday. And last meeting in San Francisco, we all got to make our own tie-dye shirts. So we got to be honorary members of Friday Secretariat. RFC editor, yeah, I think now it's called the RFC Publication Center, but RPC has other kind of meanings too. And the IANA staff, the RFC editor, they'll have desks down near the registration area that are manned almost nonstop. In particular, as you can kind of see, if you look at the pictures, on their desks, they'll always have little bits of candy. So if you need a quick snack, say, hi, yeah, how do I get a Newport number? Oh, never mind, I'll just take the, the ombuds team. The IETF takes anti-harassment seriously. We try to be a very welcoming organization. We are working on increasing diversity in a number of areas. If you have a problem and you don't feel comfortable talking to your working group chair or the area director who is their boss, this is the ombuds team, the current members. Pete, I know, is here. I'm not sure about the other two, but you can also mail ombuds team and they will work to help you work through whatever needs to be done. It's a cutesy term, but it's like better than what DEF CON calls goons, right? We have an anti-harassment policy. I'm not going to read this, what we call an eye chart slide. But if you have any questions, or you can speak to the secretariat and say, who's from the ombuds team is around. The knock. So if you new here, we set up a network. We come in and completely take over the hotel network, completely wire up, add dozens of access points in all of the meeting rooms. The chair of the IETF LLC, the corporate parent, is a guy named Jay Livingwood. Drawing a blank on his last name. Living Good. There you go. He works for Comcast, and so he has a poll going on that texting social media app that says, how much bandwidth do you think we'll use during this week? How many gigabytes? Because we're doing all the streaming of video. People are watching remote. It's incoming and it's outgoing, and then it's also extended out through all the hotel rooms. I remember in Montreal seeing two people walk through the streets, or I think one of the underground lobbies, right? Because Montreal's got a lot of underground lobbies. And it says, I don't know what hotel this is, but man, the IETF hotel has got great Wi-Fi. If you have any problem, any issues at all about meeting logistics, the network's not working, you can't connect, there's often a help desk also out in the registration area. There's a printer there if you need to print your boarding pass at the end of the week. But if you have any issues, email support. Oh, no printer. Rats. That's the only thing I ever used it for. No printer. Email support at IETF.org. They'll open up a ticket, and unlike your typical ticket trouble response system, they're very, very responsive, like within hours or an hour or less. MeetEcho is the custom IETF tool developed by the small company in Italy. All the sessions are linked off the data tracker page. You might see when you're looking at the agenda, it says, on-site thing, and that's the small lightweight client. It assumes, for example, you don't need the chat record or you don't need the video stream, right? All you need is, to record that you're here, which it does, and to maybe if there's a vote or a hum, you can, hands up or hands down. Pardon me, it's also how you get in the queue to ask questions. And we do that, as Karen said, to unify the on-site and remote participants to make sure that we're fairly balancing them. There's a MeetEcho team, you'll see them bopping around. There are practice sessions, but since you're here, you don't have to worry too much about that. Next time or a future time when you're unable to attend, in person or be on site. It's worthwhile. The data tracker, datatracker.ietf.org or dt.ietf.org. Every working group has a page on the data tracker, um, datatracker.ietf.org. You can barely see it there, /WG/ and then the working group acronym. So there's the TLS one. There are multiple tabs in there. Every working group follows the same structure. The most important thing, and the one you'll get to go to first, is here's the documents. Here's how long, you can see how long they are, when they were first updated, and what their status is. Is it a draft? Has it been adopted? Is it, is it waiting to be published because it's in the RFC publication queue? The About tab on the first one for a newcomer is the most useful. It gives you pointers to the mailing list archives, how to subscribe, who the chairs are of the group, so you can contact them if you want to ask a question, and so on. Meetings, cover all the meetings, photos, so that you can see like actual pictures of the working group chairs. Go to HTTP API if you want to see a picture of me, or NTP if you want to see a picture of Karen, I think. Mailing lists. All of the work gets done within all of the work in the IETF gets done on mailing list, as Karen mentioned. Kind of like the Apache Software Foundation, their mantra is, if it didn't happen on the mailing list, it didn't happen. Here, it's like, at the meeting, you'll often hear the phrase, to be confirmed on the mailing list. Meaning, we'll talk about it at the room, in the face-to-face meeting. We'll see if there's a consensus, and then we'll say, ask the mailing list after the meeting, are people okay with this decision or this consensus point? There's announcements. There's a whole bunch of information about the mailing lists. There's a general one called IETF at ietf.org. That's for discussions about the IETF, and it spills off into flame wars every now and then. Lots of people have subscribed, because they get burned out. Just, it's worth hanging out and learning and just ignoring, it's an XKCD cartoon. Someone's wrong on the internet. Yeah, just hit delete and move on. Zulip is our chat system. Zulip.ietf.org. It will use your data tracker credentials, so it'll pop up a little login, using IETF technology to OAuth to authenticate you. Every working group has its own Zulip area, but new participants is is one you should all check out, at least for this session. I don't know what that, Karen? What? Is it something? Yeah, so something's got to get woken up.
Oh, that, I don't know.
It's the display.
It's well, that's that one. This one is.
I'll just restart at the sometime.
Okay.
Oh, oh, that's.
I don't know. It's getting signal, but
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's only Sunday. It can't be tired yet.
Yeah, right.
Okay, you guys are almost there. We're at the end of this session. Just have a couple reminders to tell you about the rest of the week. I did want to just a quick show of hands who participated in the Meet Echo testing session we had a week or so ago. Okay, cool. For those who are actually seeing Meet Echo for the very first time right here in this room, I just wanted to point out that in the client, you'll see a little hand that looks like this. That's how you enter the queue. So yeah, if you're in a working group session, you have a question, you'll want to press that little hand that says enter the queue, and you'll see your name pop up in a little circle. That's how you know you're in the queue, and it also tells you what order you're in. So if there's a bunch of people in there, the circles are numbered, and you'll see that you're in there. And if you do it by mistake, you just press it again and you'll pop out. But I just wanted to point that out for those of you who are seeing it for the first time. So just a quick review of the new participant activities here at IETF 118. I do send emails daily, just letting you know what's happening because we're all tired and might need a little reminder. The new participant overview tutorial, that is this session. A little bit later this afternoon, we have something called Quick Connections. And what that is, the best way to describe it is kind of like speed dating, but for information related to the IETF. We have experienced IETFers. We have IETF leadership, so area directors that make up the ISG. You've got working group chairs, various other people who have been in the IETF for quite a long time, there to answer your questions. You may want to find out what working group should you go to based on your interests. They can usually help give you some ideas and give you some suggestions. So you spend a little time with one person and then we switch and you try to, meet a bunch of new people very, very quickly, hence quick connections. You do need to sign up ahead of time. That's merely just because the room we're going to be in has a fire code, so we can't have too many people in there. A lot of people do sign up though and don't show up. So if you weren't able to sign up early, you can always kind of hang out in the room and we can see if the room's not too crowded, and you can usually come on in. So then we also offer a new participants dinner. It's not an actual IETF activity. It's something that the Secretariat helps put on. It's $15. I think as about an hour ago, we had 5 or 6 spots left. That's just a chance for new participants to connect with other new participants. It's really just for you to make connections and maybe find some people with some common interests and again, instant people that you're meeting. On Thursday we have a new participant social hour. You don't need to sign up for that, just show up, and what we do there is really get a sense of just talking to you, finding out how did your week go, talk to your other fellow new participants. And we also have the ISG, the area directors, come to that so that they can also get your feedback, like what went well. Was there something that you didn't get out of the meeting that you have this opportunity to talk to them and find out more information, so that when you go home, maybe you need to be following another working group. Maybe they have contacts for other people that in between meetings you can get involved in various other groups. So it just gives you a chance to kind of wrap up the week and also just take a deep breath and you made it through, because it's tiring. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of information. So it gives you a chance to relax a little bit. There's a new participants page there that lists this information, and this information is also on the agenda, so you can find it there. If you are not subscribed to the new participant mailing list, you can still join. You have access to all the archive messages. So we do have information about tools and various different things that could be a good resource. Looking at not just general activities that aren't new participant specific. Tonight we have a welcome reception. So again, just start the week off well and meet new people. Karen and Rich mentioned Hot RFC. That's those lightning talks of people who have ideas. It's useful to go and see how it works, so that maybe at the next IETF meeting, you could bring a topic to Hot RFC. It's a great introduction to speaking in front of the room and using Meet Echo. So I highly suggest, if you don't have anything to do, go check it out. We also mentioned the Sisters group. So Sisters has a networking type event on Monday morning. It's just a light breakfast, and it's a chance to meet other women or people who identify as women. And we just talk about what's going on, struggles or ways to connect, what are people working on that other people can get involved in, and also just increasing diversity in the IETF. So again, just more connections. So there's a theme here, making connections with people. Rich mentioned the plenary. Again, it's that high level admin stuff, but sometimes very interesting. Changes every plenary, different topics depending on what's happening through the year. There's also on Thursday, there's a sisters lunch. So it's another sisters event happening. They're all on the agenda. And then ultimately, if you're not sure where to start, you're leaving this meeting um, overwhelmed, check out the blog post. It highlights a lot of interesting topics. Maybe you could start there. Just review the agenda, pop into different working groups that look interesting, look at their agenda. They list the internet drafts that they're going to be discussing. So it's another way. And just connect with other people. We mentioned Zulip. There's the mailing lists, and just chatting with people. Usually, you'll find some type of connection that will lead you to others. I am usually at the registration desk at some point during the day. If you need anything, logistics, trying to connect with somebody, trying to find a room, anything, I'm there. Anybody else in one of these teal shirts, we're here to help you, get the information you need to have a successful week. So please do not hesitate to contact us and stop by and say hello. And this is decided to stop. There we go. So yeah, I just mentioned the registration desk. There's the technical help desk downstairs, just next to the registration desk. Um, Rich mentioned the RFC editor and the IANA desks are there. Just stop, say hello. Everybody likes to chat. On Bud's team, we talked about that. And every once in a while, area directors will hold office hours. It'll usually be on the agenda, or they'll send out an email. So it's like, for example, the transport area directors might hold an office hours for an hour on a particular day in their office, and they'll let you know where that is. And so if you have transport related questions or questions about any working group, you can just stop in and say hi. And that's just an opportunity to connect with some of the leadership. And above all, enjoy yourselves. Again, we understand that this is an overwhelming week. There's a lot to learn. In general, like if it's your very, very first meeting, you could be a new participant next meeting and the meeting after. Generally, it's like your first to your fourth meeting that you're considered a new participant. So, you're welcome to join in new participant activities for a couple meetings till you fully get the hang of it. And if there's anything any of us can do to help you, we are here, and we hope you have a fabulous week. Any questions? And yeah.
Actually, going back to the working groups, I was just curious how the chairs were decided.
You want to take that?
So, two things. First of all, I'm not going to ask you to do it, but as a reminder, anytime you want to ask a question, you need to go to the microphone. But in this case, I just wanted to remind folks of that. For working group chairs, the area directors make the selection of the working group chairs. Sometimes, a lot of times it's, there's a set of interested parties that got the work started, and they might be chosen from that. Also, there are other considerations. They're looking at, balancing, a certain amount of neutrality. And they're always looking for working group chairs. And so, in fact, they recently offered a training for working group chairs, and they opened it up to anybody in the IETF who was interested in it. We definitely need more working group chairs. You'll see a lot of us recycling through working groups that have done it for a while. So if you have any interest in doing that, start preparing now. Any other questions? Yeah. So go ahead into the mic, and then yeah, both of you. Off you go.
Also, if you are in the Meet Echo client right now and you haven't tried putting yourself in the queue just for fun, feel free to put yourself in the queue just to test the buttons. It's we're in a safe space here. Nobody's going to get mad. Put yourself in, take yourself out, just to practice.
Okay,
Yeah, go ahead.
hello everyone. I start by introducing myself. My name is Huda Sheikh. I am from Tunisia. I'm first time newcomers to ITF meeting.
And I want to know about how to join working group. Is it about writing an email to chair or just subscribing to a mailing list?
Just subscribe to the
Thank.
mailing list. That's how you join.
Okay.
The other thing I want to point out that she did that was really good, and that I forgot to mention when you're asking questions, when you go to the microphone, announce who you are. Um, it's a little bit easier on the note takers now because it's in, if you've joined the queue, then it's in there, but always announce who you are to the microphone.
Thank you.
Hi, Stephanie Mickelson, UNFPA. And I just had a question. I mean, it seems like we're all doing a lot of work. You guys have done a lot of work for all of this. So I assume that the Secretariat is covered, as you mentioned. But does anybody else getting like financial support, like the working chairs or anybody else, just for
So,
curiosity?
the Secretariat, if you look at the LLC, they have some staff that's separate from the Secretariat. So there's like Greg Wood is the operations.
Communications director.
Yeah, communications and operations, I think he's operations as well. And there's some developers. So if you look at the LLC, they're funded. And then if you look at the Secretariat is paid. The network team is half volunteers and half paid. So there's a company called Line Speed, and they do a lot of the work to run out the cables and everything. And then it's supported by some volunteers on the network team. Meet Echo is a paid support. So a lot of the logistics and a lot of the support for both the meeting and all the work in between is paid. Um, the original version of a lot of the tools, like the data tracker and those things, were originally done by volunteers, but now that has also been taken over. So support for ongoing tools. So in this context, for example, Michelle is with the Secretariat, so she's obviously paid staff. Rich and I, our organizations, whoever they might be, are supporting us to be here, and we volunteer to do these kinds of activities.
Wonderful, thank you.
There is some support for like registration fee waivers. So there are some ways to get a little bit of support, but in general, none of the leadership of the IETF is paid in any way. Any other questions? All right. Well, we really appreciate you coming, and you can also still, I won't put you on the spot, but if you want to test your button to get in the queue so that you know how to get in the queue for the rest of the meeting, feel free to do that.
And we're hanging out up
Yeah.
here for a little bit. So if you want to come up and ask a question, you're welcome to.
Oh, wait, someone.
Just briefly, sorry, I haven't worked it out yet. Greg Chul's ISC. How do you get to that section where there's the race? I can't see it from meeting agenda how you actually get there.
Oh, so you have to be in the Meet Echo tool. So on your in my version on my laptop, you can see. Oops. Just don't need the power. So on this client, this is where Michelle was saying there's a hand right here. And
Are you referring to actually getting into Meet Echo?
Yes.
Okay, so on the agenda page, there's a bunch of icons. So you have the working group meeting name, and on the right hand side, you'll see a bunch of icons. There is icons for joining Meet Echo. There's a note taking icon. There's a bunch of different ones. If you join I think it looks like a little video camera.
It says on-site tool.
yeah,
It's the
on-site.
label. When
Okay.
you hover over one of the icons, it says on-site tool. That will get you to the lightweight client that would then be. It's a browser-based app.
Yeah.
That's the full client though, right?
But the other thing is,
That's the
No,
full
it's
client from the agenda.
right. So that they're right.
Is it possible to show that on screen just so that we've got a?
If you click on the QR code, you should also get there. No.
Hey, bring it. Come visit us, and we'll figure it out.
We'll debug it offline.
So Abdullah Shakur has entered the queue. Excellent. The other thing if you're sitting in the room and you're paying attention to the screen, you're probably not using your laptop. So you're probably using that, your phone. And if you're using your phone, then you can get into the queue there. So it's not not as obvious to me, but maybe we should do like a short Meet Echo tutorial in the future. Any other questions? All right. If you have anything else, feel free to come up. And if you want to come on up, we'll see if we can help you out.
When, when would the slides? When would the slides be available?
They should be online now. We uploaded them shortly before this meeting, and if you go to the materials page, you'll find them there. Okay?
I do. I go to the open folder icon and I see slides, but nothing happens.
Okay. I don't see the person speaking, so. Oh, you're on the remote. Rich, do you want to talk? Can you talk him through this? Sure. If there should be that same long list of icons, there should be a meeting materials one. Okay, so if you go to the meeting itself.
Okay.